And
Okay.
Taiji,
join into the
oh, sorry.
conversation, if I might. Um,
Okay. Mark.
that what I'm hearing for so many people is nature is kind of at the core of what this study is. And I always thought that because before I found Tai Chi, I found the Tao Te Ching, and that spoke to me. And then I found this martial art that just was the embodiment of this philosophy that just spoke to me. And in all the years of teaching, the main thing that I've focused on is what I call the right to be. That people have the right to be, and that incorporates the martial part of it as well as the spiritual part of it, which seems to me that it is about bringing together the yin and the yang together into the whole, back into Wu Ji, back into the unified whole. And in doing that and involving the the levels of body, mind, and then spirit, which seems to be the most sort of difficult to grasp and be able to even discuss because it is so elusive. If chi is elusive, the spirit is even more elusive. And for a lot of people, because of religious upbringing or whatever, there's a lot of preconceived notions about what it is. And I had an experience not that long ago when I was doing my practice, and there was some little insect, like a centipede or something like that, that was kind of right near where I was doing my practice. And as my feet moved, I would watch it with this amazing intelligence that it had to avoid me, to move around me, to have this entire relationship that I had with this brainless little insect, and realizing that the same life force that was coursing through me, that animated me, was coursing through this little insect there. And that there's some way in which, and I see this in all forms of life that I encounter, whether it's birds or other animals, and looking at their eyes and realizing that there's a consciousness that's there. And that consciousness, which in some ways has the same essence as my consciousness. It may not have the intellect or the other things that we have as human beings, but there is some essence there that is common amongst every form of life that I've been able to perceive. And it's very, very evident when you see something that has that perceptual quality. And I know some of the studies now about plant life and the intelligence of trees and the intelligence of mushrooms and the communication that's happening in the earth. And you realize that this intelligence, this consciousness that is here is everywhere abundant. And we just happen to have our little piece of it. So there's that, that idea that when people talk about God, that God is everywhere, but then God is the smallest, the still small voice, the little smallest thing that changes you from being a living person to being a non-living person. Because at that moment of transition, what's shifted? It's almost impossible to tell. And that moment when life comes together, it's the coming together of these two components that merge and then become something new, and then they become something independent. And the rest of life, just like from conception to birth to all the way through our lives, is one of growing and then separation. So these forces that define life, which are common amongst all life forms, aversion and sensitivity and reproduction and eating, and so all that, which is so much a part of what we're doing. And when we're involved in this study of Tai Chi, because we're humans and because we have these tremendous intellects and these incredible egos and minds that are capable of this very narrow focus, we have to learn how to bring that fullness of energy back into our bodies. And so the focus and the beauty of Tai Chi is, and this was the way I was taught it, was you learn the outside, you learn the movements, the form, all that to learn the inside. But the ultimate goal is to learn the inside. And the inside, even when you get past the physical and past the energy. What is it that's motivating that? And I was writing the chapter in the book I'm working on the six harmonies. And the internal harmonies are mind leads the chi, and chi leads the body, right?
Ah,
And so that first thought that we have, which is our ability to think, that sets an intention, and then we have an intention. And now in order to manifest that intention, normal activities, working with inanimate objects, we go mind to body. We don't have to consider the energy. But in Tai Chi, in the work that we do with Tai Chi, you go from mind and you set the intention, and now you let the intention guide the chi, and you allow the chi to lead the action so that it's following that process. And in that, you begin to sort of touch into this area where you can start talking about the spirit, or when you start talking about the idea that if the fundamental things that we do in Tai Chi are to be able to have this structure and then to release tension, to be able to have the physical ability to stand, to hold yourself up. And where does that upward rise happen? What is it that makes the sunflower grow towards the sun? It's the same thing that makes us stand up. You know, I was paused here because I got called by a great grandmother and her new baby. She wanted to see me, so I missed the first part of the meeting, and I was watching this little tiny little baby, and it's just lifting its head, and it's just beginning to be able to sit up. But that's that drive that we have as human beings. That seems to me to be very close to what we talk about when we look at how spirit manifests itself.
would you say something more about the right to be? That seems to me to be the key, because if that's true, then that makes martial arts okay.
Well, that is exactly how I feel about it, that the right to be in, and when and I said, because a lot of the students that I'm teaching now are older, they're not young bucks who are going to go out there and try to, you know, get into barroom brawls and things like that. But being able to stand and be strong from any position, to be able to know how to align your body. Once you get the alignment correctly, there's a natural strength that occurs in a person. And when that happens, and when you're in a harmonious, you use the word harmony, and the harmony and being in a harmonious relationship with gravity allows you then to release the excess energy that you're using to hold yourself up against gravity. Because the earth is constantly at work pulling us down. The spirit is constantly at work pulling us up, lifting us up. And so I think that you said, Elizabeth, in the beginning that I heard was that, you know, we're walking in the sky, we're walking in the heavens with our head in the heavens and our feet on the ground, and our feet are on the earth. So in between heaven and earth is where we are. We're not inside the ground. We don't have roots that have gone down into the ground, but here we are walking on the earth with our heads in the heaven. And if we have that proper relationship with gravity, then we've released so much of that energy that we end up using to try to defy gravity. And now you have an inherent and intrinsic strength, the natural strength. And that's the strength that we cultivate in Tai Chi, so that it moves through your body and not coursing in the empty space. So if you hold your arm up and you're using force and muscle, you're virtually creating a virtual line through space, through the empty space here. But if you're using Tai Chi, you're using it through your limbs, out to your fingertips, right? And so that, and learning to do that, and changing the way that you move in that way, which allows you to release the excess tension you're carrying in one area of the body so that the whole body is moving, and you end up working very much the way a Swiss clock would work, where every little gear turns and the second hand works at its rate and the hour hand works at its rate, but they're all working together. And if one of them stops, the whole apparatus stops. So in the classics, the Tai Chi classics, it says, when one part moves, all the parts move. That's all part of this whole idea of letting spirit, letting chi, letting that natural quality run through you. One of the things that I think about a lot about Sung is that it goes in two directions. There's the letting go, and the other is the letting flow. So, and the way I've described it to my class is if you think about like a canal and the lock system, when you open the lock, if you're going upstream with your boat, the lock opens and the water fills up. That's letting it flow in. And if you're going downstream, you open the lock and the water goes out. So you can use it to rise or you can use it to lower, but the sung actually goes both ways. And a lot of people think about it only in the context of letting go and letting everything sort of fall away. But the other part of it to me is that when you let things also fill, so there's that filling aspect of sung that's equally important and requires the same kind of releasing of the muscular tension that you're talking about in both ways, in both directions. Bruce Francis talks about the water method as being going from ice to liquid to gas.
Yeah, right. I know.
That process, because a lot of martial arts and a lot of people who are doing Tai Chi, in fact, are using a fire method, which is to burn through things. And that's a very, that's more of the sort of marine mentality of damn the torpedoes and full speed ahead that is so common amongst, a very ambitious society that we live in. And Tai Chi, which goes sort of is antithetical to that in many ways, because we are working on that idea of releasing and letting that energy flow through you. And it's a very natural force that moves through you, a natural power that moves through you and differentiates that from force, where you're using tension and contracted muscles to move, but you're actually using stretch, the idea of stretching to make your movements happen. And that stretching is the idea, is also that extension of that flow of energy moving through you.
Yeah.